Have you ever imagined living in a place where justice meant losing parts of your body? Or even something much worse? Few people realize it, but the Ottoman Empire, so famous for its golden palaces, invincible armies and bustling markets, also hid a much darker side. A relentless justice built on pain, blood, and fear. And don't be fooled, these punishments had two very clear purposes. The first, to punish the guilty, sometimes so cruelly that it left scars for life. The second, perhaps even more important, to terrify society into absolute obedience to the state. After all, who would dare conspire against the Sultan, knowing they might end up blind, without hands, or facing something even worse? What you're about to learn reveals a lesser-known side of history, a side that proves Ottoman power wasn't sustained only through wealth and conquests, but also through fear and violence. Can you imagine standing in a crowd, watching someone being executed right in front of your eyes, while everyone around you stands in silence, clutching their own fear? But be careful. Not everything you'll hear here is for the weak, because the worst punishment is saved for the end. And I challenge you to watch until then without looking away. Take advantage and leave your like and subscribe to the channel. If you think the Ottomans' most brutal punishments always involved blood or public executions, you're mistaken, because sometimes torture began in silence. Few people talk about it, but imprisonment in dungeons was one of the Ottoman Empire's preferred methods for dealing with minor crimes or political prisoners. And don't think it was just about being locked behind bars. The conditions were terrifying. Imagine spending days or even months trapped in damp, dark cells so filthy that the smell of mold and excrement clung to your skin. Could you endure living in a place where rats shared the floor with you, and the only daylight was a thin beam slipping through cracks in the stone? Besides the suffocating environment, Ottoman guards provided the bare minimum of food and water, just enough to keep the prisoner alive. Alive, but completely broken inside. Because, in truth, the goal wasn't merely imprisonment. It was to destroy the prisoner's spirit, crush their will to resist, and even buy time to decide the fate of delicate cases, especially those involving political figures. Sometimes, killing quickly would have been merciful. The Ottomans knew that the fear of confinement, and the stories circulating about those cells, could silence voices before they ever rose against the Sultan. But not every Ottoman punishment required bars or chains to inflict pain. Few people know the brutality of the Falaka. This second method on our list was one of the most widespread corporal punishments in the entire Ottoman Empire. It was simple, and at the same time terrifying. Soldiers, slaves, students, no one was safe from the stick or the rod. The procedure: the condemned was laid on his back, tied by the hands and ankles. Two men held his legs upward while the executor delivered violent blows to the soles of his feet. The pain was unbearable. Some could barely stand afterward, and walking became an agony for days or even weeks. But there was something that made the Falaka the perfect punishment in the eyes of Ottoman power. It left no visible marks. There were no scars on the face or back that might stir public sympathy. The humiliation and pain were kept private for the victim, and the fear remained for all who witnessed it. For that reason, it served as a powerful tool to maintain discipline, whether in schools, among the troops, or even within the harem. And don't think it was a rare occurrence. There are historical records of its use right up until the end of the empire. But if that already sounds cruel, the next method went even further, turning execution into a public spectacle. If the Falaka left invisible marks, the next method left marks impossible to forget, especially for those watching. Hanging was also one of the most frequent methods in the Ottoman Empire, applied against murderers, thieves, and especially rebels. And it wasn't carried out in secret. Executions took place publicly, before crowds. The goal wasn't just to kill. It was to show every man, woman, and child watching what happened to anyone who dared challenge the power of the state. In many cases, the bodies were left hanging for hours or even days, displayed as a silent yet powerful message. Disobedience came at a high price. And there were even crueler variations. Sometimes, instead of a simple rope, the Ottomans used hooks or stakes driven into the body, prolonging the pain before death. Everything served to intimidate, crush any thought of rebellion, and reinforce the absolute power of the Sultan. But not everyone was hanged in the public square. For certain condemned individuals, death was reserved for silent halls and locked doors. This is where one of the most emblematic and mysterious methods of the Ottoman Empire comes in: strangulation with a silk bowstring. Few people know this dark detail. When the condemned was a high-ranking official or someone from the imperial court, shedding blood was seen as undignified and also politically dangerous. That's why the Ottomans devised a calculated method to kill without causing scandal. The silk bowstring, carried out far from the eyes of the people, often in the Topkapi Palace or in special prisons. The condemned was silently strangled. No blood, no commotion, no crowds. This practice had two main purposes: to preserve the social dignity of the condemned, especially if they were close to the Sultan, and, above all, to avoid any political crisis or rumors that could shake the empire. It was cruel, but in the eyes of the Ottomans, it was also a matter of honor and stability. If you're enjoying learning about these dark stories from the Ottoman Empire and want to help us keep producing this kind of content, consider becoming a member of the channel. Besides supporting our work, you'll also become an exclusive member. The link is down below in the description. And if this already seems violent to you, the next method went straight for the body, removing parts as a public example. Amputation was a punishment reserved especially for thieves and rebels. Depending on the crime, hands or feet were the primary targets. It wasn't just a punishment, it was a spectacle carried out in squares or markets, in front of crowds, so everyone could clearly see the price of disobedience. The goal was clear: not only to physically disable the criminal, but to mark them forever. Anyone who saw that mutilated person would immediately remember the absolute power of the Sultan, and what happened to those who defied the law. It was such an effective punishment that it was prescribed in Islamic law and widely documented in the Ottoman context. But if losing a hand or a foot was already terrifying, the next method might have been even worse, because it didn't just take away a limb, it took away all the light from the world. In sixth place on our list, having one's eyes gouged out was one of the most impactful and cruel punishments of the Ottoman Empire, reserved for acts of treason or serious offenses against the state. It was a way to politically neutralize any opponent. After all, a blind man cannot lead revolts, read secret documents, or conspire against the throne. And it wasn't just physical blindness. It was a sentence of social isolation. In Ottoman society, becoming blind was considered by many to be worse than death. The famous Ottoman traveler of Leah Shalebi left detailed accounts of public executions where criminals had their eyes gouged out in front of crowds. Beyond the excruciating pain, there was the psychological terror. The condemned knew that, from that moment on, he would be seen as a pariah, unable to work, support his family, or even walk alone through the streets. For the Ottomans, it was the perfect way to annihilate an enemy without killing him, and, at the same time, send a clear message to the entire population. But believe it or not, there were punishments even more extreme, capable of affecting not just the body, but a man's very identity. Few people talk about this, but emasculation was one of the most extreme punishments in the Ottoman Empire. It consisted of the removal of the male genital organs, a punishment so brutal that it was not applied in just any case. It was reserved for political punishments or sexual crimes, and it wasn't merely about physical pain. The condemned man lost his masculinity in the eyes of Ottoman society, lost status, respect, and, above all, the ability to have children. Emasculation left a man alive, but socially dead. And even though it was rare, there are historical records proving that this practice carried a devastating psychological impact. The eighth method of punishment on our list is beheading, another very frequent method in the Ottoman Empire, used especially against traitors, conspirators, or anyone considered a serious political threat. The execution was almost always carried out in public. The sword or axe would come down on the condemned person's neck right there in the square, but the punishment didn't end there. In a military context, the heads of defeated enemies were displayed as trophies or sent to the capital as proof of victory. A famous case was that of the rebel Sheikh Bedreddin, executed in Serez in present-day Greece in 1420. His decapitation was a political and religious event, carefully orchestrated to crush any notion of rebellion. Beheading wasn't just about punishment. It was about dominating through imagery and example. A head held high by an executioner spoke louder than any written decree. But even this brutal public method was not the cruelest the Ottoman Empire ever used. The worst was reserved for extreme situations, a practice so terrifying that even other nations associate its name with pure horror. Few methods of execution reached the level of brutality of impalement. In the Ottoman Empire, it was considered the most cruel punishment a person could face. The procedure is difficult even to describe. A sharp stake was inserted into the condemned person's body, usually through the rectum, and often pierced internal organs until it emerged through the mouth or chest. Death was almost never immediate. In some cases, the victim agonized for hours or even days, and it wasn't just about killing. The goal was to inflict the maximum possible pain and, above all, to spread terror. For that reason, impalement was reserved for criminals considered extremely dangerous or for traitors. But here's a detail many people ignore. Contrary to popular belief, the Ottomans did not carry out impalements as systematically as, for instance, in Wallachia under Vlad the Impaler. In the Ottoman Empire, impalement was more sporadic. It was used mainly as a psychological weapon to terrorize rebellious populations or crush uprisings. The mere sight of a bloodied stake was enough to silence crowds. After everything you've heard so far, it's impossible to look at the Ottoman Empire merely as a realm of opulent palaces, victorious armies, and exotic markets, because behind all that splendor, there was also a dark side, where power was maintained through fear and pain. Today, all of this shocks us with its brutality. But for them, each of these practices served a very clear purpose: to demonstrate the absolute power of the state and keep society under strict control. If you were impressed by these stories, imagine how many other secrets are still hidden in the dark corridors of history. And this is the right place to discover them. If you want to keep exploring the darkest corners of history and uncover punishments even more terrifying than these, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, turn on notifications, and come along with me to uncover the mysteries that time has tried to erase, to discover the most disturbing punishment invented by the Syrians, which, believe it or not, is worse than any of the techniques presented today. Just click on the screen and check it out.